my granny passed away. I think I was in my early 20s, but I was born in England. I moved back when I was 12. They said that all the grandkids had grown up, or all her, my granny and grandpa's children had grown up, and they missed having a child around. They said, "Would you like to go, Laura?" I said, "Yeah, of course." And then I found out later that they were worried about me and kind of like set it up a little bit. But of course I was going to say yes. Had the best year of my life. And I love it here. I just love the energy of this festival. It's incredible to be here in person with all of you. And yeah, I mean, I've been doing the work. I mean, but, you know, you kind of fall down, get back up again kind of work. You know, it's kind of work in progress kind of work. But yeah, I mean, I felt really tuned in to something as a child, just, you know, beyond just being the black sheep. I'm like, you know, how did I end up here and what am I doing here? But it came, like, it got real clear to me because Eisenhower was very close in spirit. And I'm like, okay, you know, he was like in his military uniform and I just felt his presence and I'm just looking on the bookshelves. I'm like, okay, like, I hope he didn't do anything terrible because I know a lot of people in leadership positions are. But no, I felt his presence. I felt like I was being prepared for something. And I was getting, you know, major downloads. I was always sort of like focused on like this mission and I couldn't talk to anybody about it. So it was sort of like living a double life. It was easier to just play the screw up, like, you know, kind of like Laura's crazy. It's like, yeah, I'm crazy. We don't have to talk about it. So I ended up at the kiddie table a lot because if I started to open my mouth, it didn't get very far. But at the same time, I'm like, aren't you all related to the man that warned us about the military industrial complex? We can't talk about 9/11 or all this kind of stuff. We decided as a family it would be better to just enjoy each other's company, and it still is an incredibly, incredibly loving family. And we just didn't want to get into all that controversial stuff. So when I became a public person, not really knowing what everybody felt and thought or where they really stood, I could feel this unspoken like gratitude, like, oh God, thank God Laura's doing this because we really don't want to. I think it had to skip a generation, even though like my mom and her siblings, David, Mary, and Anne, were very close to Eisenhower, spent a lot of time at the White House. And, you know, there's a lot of photos of my mom and Ike, you know, talking. I'm like, what is he telling her? And it seemed like it had to skip a generation. And I tried to pick their brains a little bit, you know, like, let's talk about Val Thor. And then David's like, oh yeah, you're talking about the, like, superhero guy? Like, no, the ET that Eisenhower was good friends with? Hello, anybody? Like, where were you guys? So either they were sworn to secrecy because people were getting offed for exposing this kind of stuff. It felt like Eisenhower couldn't do much until he warned us, even though he did a lot without us knowing. That is now coming to light that I've been finding out about. But it seemed like it had to skip a generation. So it's just been an incredibly loving family. And a lot of people think presidential bloodline must be Illuminati, must be like this and that. And seeing it firsthand, doing hypnoregression and just making sure it's not. So it's, and not every president is, as we know. Things change a lot after his administration. And yeah, I've been just going down the rabbit hole. So here's kind of like my resume. It's not like, oh, I got these big sort of degrees. I didn't add some of the ones. My background's wilderness expedition leadership. I got a science degree and associates. But yeah, I'm like in high school in Washington, D.C., and not the best student. And I think I had the worst attendance in my high school. So you tend to carry that kind of stigma if you're that kind of kid. You're either a rebel or you got learning disabilities or you just can't sit still. You get thrown labels, right? But then after I went down the rabbit holes, I'm like, you know what? You know, maybe not paying attention was actually a good thing, and maybe there's something else I understand. I didn't want to get indoctrinated. But, you know, I was a selective learner because then I'm like, yeah, maybe I do have learning disabilities. Until I found that I was self-educating myself, going to libraries and digging into information, and then eventually putting together presentations. And I don't think everybody's indoctrinated just because they do well or get a degree. I think, you know, we learn valuable skills. The question is, though, can you utilize that and enjoy that skill or talent or ability? And when it comes time to make a decision, if you're being asked to compromise yourself or do something that you know doesn't feel right, can you walk away and take that skill and ability and redirect it away from the vampiric matrix system that just wants to use that for their benefit and their agenda, as we see with what teachers and doctors and people in their field are struggling with, which is a really difficult thing. So I'm spending way too long just in my intro here, but realizations and epiphanies along the way, just like, oh, you know, when that dot connects, or you just get that download, and I've just been focused on the soul journey, just everything about the soul, and just paying attention to life experience. And whistleblower testimony and research, learning a lot about that, and then really getting into just galactic history, astrology, chelantic science, and some of my information you'll see comes from Lisa Renee from energeticsynthesis.com, and we've actually formed a really good friendship, which means so much to me, because I really don't want to bother her too much, but when I'm really like going through it, and I reach out to her, it's just amazing. Like, we'll have like epic 8-hour conversations. I'm like, did we really just talk for 8 hours? It's like, so she's been like, she's been tremendous, and her information, everything that she brings through is really incredible. So it really helped me to define and put into words a little bit more of what I was tuning into. And so I am going to refer to that. So I'm going to tell a little bit about, I don't know how many people know my story. I don't know how much I even talk about it. But I thought I would start with it. So in 2006, they attempted to recruit me into a hidden operation regarding the alternative 3 colonization of Mars scenario, with the target date being 2012. So that's kind of a long story as far as how that happened. But I could tell that there was some sort of weaponry on me. And some people, when they hear this and I get feedback, they're like, oh, yeah, Laura claims she was on Mars. I'm like, I've never claimed to have been on Mars. I was recruited to go to Mars, and that's very different. But a lot of the colleagues and friends that I have you know, done 20 and backs, or Andrew Bashago teleported there. So, you know, sometimes people just kind of think that I was doing that kind of stuff. So no, except for when I just leave my body and I'm off traveling. I'm like, yeah, I went to Mars. I'm like really out there. I was never grounded growing up. And I feel like I just needed like-minded people. I just, the one speaker that talked about school is not a place for children, I was like, yes. Because everything, I just resonated. And yeah, I was just really checked out. I mean, I did my best to play human and stuff like that, but like I just could not like ground unless I was like in nature. And that's why I ran right into the wilderness after DC. I'm like, I need to recover from this. And I dressed like I was going to climb a mountain every day. People are like, are you going hiking or something? I'm like, eventually, when I get the heck out of here. And I didn't even bother applying for colleges. It was just foreign to me. And then the Adirondack flyer came in the mail, and I'm like, I'm going. And then to pull good scores, you know, after like getting not, you know, D's, dynamo, and E's, excellent, and F's, fantastic, throughout high school. It was like, wow, okay, like I can, you know, I'm thriving. I can lead people in the wilderness. But I never ended up doing that because I'm like, that's a big responsibility. I just needed to just get really close to Mother Earth. And yeah, and then I had my kids, and it's been such an adventure. So there's always this kind of attention, though. And it felt like weaponry, but obviously it was invisible. So you can't go very far in a conversation without sounding like you got issues. Like, you're like, or parent are like, yeah, I feel like I'm being followed, I'm being targeted, I'm being tracked. So I just, I thought it was me for a while. I'm like, yeah, because nobody's really talking about this. I'm like, I probably have like really crappy karma. What did I do? Because every time I try and create something, there'll be some kind of sabotage, or a person that I get close with like turns demonic. Like, what am I doing wrong? Like, so I ended up going to a clairvoyant institute. I was going to go to an herbal school in California, and they didn't have enough applicants. And I ran into somebody who was at this like psychic institute, and I'm like, yeah, maybe I'll get some answers here. You know, I had my intuition, but I'm like, how reliable is that? Because am I just, and I ended up realizing how reliable it was when I got out of this recruitment, knowing something was off, even though they presented it as a positive thing. I'm like, okay, my intuition works. Same with not paying attention to school. That was probably my intuition. Okay, I'm good. And so I went to the institute. I just went in to just do a meditation and just check it out. And the minute I walked in, the woman who was conducting says, Eisenhower just walked in. I was like, what? I'm like, oh my God, these people are actually for real. And I'm not Eisenhower, but, and I wasn't carrying the name, so it wasn't like I signed anything, right? And I wasn't carrying the name at the time. And I went up to her at the end. I'm like, you just said Eisenhower came in the room. He's like, yeah. or she, he walked right in with you. And I'm like, seriously? And I was just like, whoa, okay, I'm going to stick around here and like work with these people. That was enough validation that some of these folks are able to see. And they were like, whoa, you really need a grounding cord. You're just like holding on to everything. You got the weight of the world on your shoulders. And they could like see the mission. They saw the weaponry. They're like, you're being like targeted. And I'm like, well, what did I do? Like, they're like, no, it's not because you're dark. It's not because it's karma. It's because your mission. And I'm like, all right, somebody gets it. I can actually talk about this. And they tried to help, but they couldn't break the weaponry at all. And they were like, we did our best. And I'm like, okay, bye. Like, good luck. I finished it. I finished it, became a minister. That's sort of the certification that you get. And I was doing a lot of energy readings for people. But I moved more towards astrology just to kind of have it be a little bit more grounded in case I wasn't, just in case, as a backup. You know, because if I'm seeing something, what if, yeah, let's just look at the chart just as a backup and kind of utilizing both. So they helped me to understand all of this. And it was after I went there that I'm like, okay, they couldn't help me. If they can't help me, I guess I have to help myself. And I was pretty much going to help myself anyway. I wasn't planning on going to it. It just sort of came along. So I'm in California. I'd already had my boys. And I'm like, I just can't seem to get myself out of this. So I surrender. Whatever it is, whatever's trying to control me, like I'm just going to like let it do its thing and control me to where I need to have a showdown with them. You know, I can't get away from it. So where are they? What is this weaponry you're targeting? Where does it want me to go? So I sort of like followed the path of that, ended up in the basement of my mother's house in Washington, D.C., and went to this thing. So I'm like, I need to just get out of the house, meet people. And I met this man. He was drumming, spoke Gaelic, total connection, hung out all night talking. I'm like, oh my God, like sacred union. I've been waiting for this all my life. And oh, no, but he was the man who was a part of the recruitment to go to Mars. So I'm just thinking this is like, like just some sort of future thing, space travel, no big deal. Like, shh, you can't tell anybody. This is very, And he was going to secret meetings with this group called the Aviary, and they mentioned the looking glass technologies. And after I refused to go, after we had gotten a Celtic Handfast year and a day ceremony, and I moved to North Carolina to be with him, that's when it really started to amp up. Because every time he talked about it, I'm like, there's absolutely no way you're staying on Earth with me. If you want to go, like totally go. I just don't think I'm going to go. And he finally confessed that he was sent on a mission. I was a mission, that they tracked me and they put him there, but they had given him some sort of trauma-based mind control. This is when I really started learning about stuff. He had handlers, and he would get phone calls and disappear for days, and I'm just like, whoa. And the group, the Aviary, had all these code names like Penguin and Owl. And I always joke, it's like being in a Batman movie. When are the credits going to come up? When is this going to end? And it's just like, whoa. Yeah, it's like, where's the Joker and where's everybody? So, yeah, I knew there was something preparing me, and that's why I think Eisenhower was like really close to me as a child, and everything about this particular window period. Because the target date was 2012. I'm like, how am I going to be a part of all of this if I'm on Mars? There's just no freaking way. And anyway, I knew that there's something sinister about it. I researched a lot about Alternative 3. Alternatives 1, 2, and 3 were something actually established in the Eisenhower administration in the event of catastrophes. And I'm thinking catastrophes, the catastrophes are probably engineered because I know there's geoengineering, I know there's chemtrails, I know there's mass manipulation. So if there are catastrophes, more than likely these catastrophes have been made, man-made. And if Mother Earth wants to create a catastrophe, well, so be it. I'd rather die here with Mother Earth. And it's like, what is there to fear about death? How many times have we died and come back? It's like, we're not going anywhere. We just keep, hopefully not popping back in this lower density. But we are not in that lower density. That's the beauty. We might be witnessing it, but we are the new Earth energy. We are the ancient Earth. We are we're doing it. So anyway, this is who are the Aviary? They all had cover occupations. It took me weeks to find evidence that supported this intuitive feeling I had. They had covered everything up. They were just like this think tank interested in UFO phenomenon. But actually, what I was picking up on is that they had technology that was like artificial telepathy. And what my partner was hearing about going to Mars was not a legitimate communication with ETs, which is what he was saying. And I'm like, I hate to break it to you. It seems like artificial telepathy. And then years later, this came out, and it was talking about the Aviary, and it even mentioned on the website artificial telepathy. And I'm like, yes, my intuition works. So the Aviary is a collection of strange birds, a group of key scientists, military men, and intelligence agents who share an intense interest in UFOs, telepathy, remote viewing, parapsychology, mind control, and the creation of psychotronic weapons. So I'm like, all right, since I surrendered and I meet this man and he's hanging out with these guys and I felt this weaponry on me, they're the ones then, obviously. And I'm like, why would they want me there anyway? So who knows? I think it had maybe something to do with being born into this family, and I came to find out more recently a connection that sort of makes sense. But anyway, they're also connected with my labs, which I felt he might have gone through as a child, and gang stalking and major harassment. So this website didn't come out until years later, and I wasn't hearing anything, and I'm like, it's like heavy decisions, like, this is for your protection, you get off planet, and you know how the mind is when you land in this human vessel, it can mess with you a little. But they couldn't, mind control me, but they knew they could heart control me. They probably looked at my chart, all the Venus, Pluto, okay, she's love driven. She's looking for sacred union, let's target her heart. Let's pull in the guy and set her up. And actually they located us in a past life. They used the looking glass technology to make sure that we had a bond, because I'm not just gonna fall for some guy, right? Unless there's a soul connection. Unless I drink too much. No, I'm just kidding. Camp's clear to lead. That's not true. But anyway, yeah, so they were able to locate a previous lifetime. And so very, very sneaky, as we see, as their agendas are on this planet, it's just insanity. So anyway, because that's alternative 3, when I first started speaking, I'm like, well, what about alternative 4? And to me, it's about connecting with the organic timeline of ascension and the divine birthright of our incredible human potential as a unified species and as individuals. We can work with the higher dimensional races of the cosmos and recognize that we are the higher beings, and this earth and our higher self is the most important thing we can connect with. Our bodies hold the natural and cosmic laws. And during this window period we're in, we have an incredible opportunity to achieve ascension. It's gradual, but we will begin to find it more and more. There's much that we're still up against, obviously, that we have to be aware of, so that we can cross the threshold and begin to shift this human experience. And we know that we are the shift, and that it's based in these greater initiations and waking up to the madness so that we're not manipulated. And yeah, so the whole alternative 3 scenario, and that's why it was always weird at the dinner table or family events. I went and visited my granddad, Ike's son, every year for Thanksgiving. And after I went through this, it's like, it's like, I almost got taken to Mars. Anybody want to talk about that? And it's just kind of like, I love them, so I'm not trying to be like, what's wrong with them? But yeah, just kind of, my mom, helped me through it, but it's more like this just support, almost like they trusted, you know what you're doing, we don't really know what to do, but we will have your back. And so it's just a wonderfully loving family. Anybody who, has heard about David or any of the siblings or the grandkids, they're just wonderful. He always brings a karaoke machine, so it's always wild, the remaining, Eisenhower clan, singing Led Zeppelin on karaoke, to my family. It's yeah, this is awesome, and doing duets, and it's just really fun, family, good times. And and everybody's down to earth. They've worked really, really hard to get to where they're at. They're, certainly Eisenhower didn't get involved with any kind of bankster stuff. Everything that was left in the family ended up being a museum. It's got to have special permission to walk the house. But when we were little, we stayed there, and I was able to meet Mamie. But it's not there's any oh, you can inherit this. It's no, it's a museum. Okay, bummer. But that's all right. I'd like to work hard. But so this is where I ended up instead. And it was actually the Venus transit of 2012. That was the target date to go to Mars. And so it was really surreal because Chief Golden Lady showed up at a MUFON event where I was speaking, and I talked about this dream, I guess, in a video that he saw about a big golden eagle swooping out of the sky and picking me up. And so I'm always looking in the air after that dream. I'm come on, come get me, please. And then Chief Golden Lady shows up, and he's you were talking about me. And I'm okay. And maybe, absolutely, that makes sense. And I started to speak with the Star Knowledge family and conferences. And because the target date was 2012, that we were supposed to be on Mars as permanent colonists, it was very surreal to synchronistically meet somebody that had a telescope and go to the College of the Siskiyous and look at Venus transiting the sun. Because I'm all about, just the Venus transits and all that energy. And the College of the Siskiyous is where they had the Mars training program where Andrew Basiago was, and that he attended, that Ed Dames taught. And because Project Pegasus pre-identified me before birth, Andrew Basiago says, to look at the Venus transits right on top of the Mars training program when I got out of being recruited or taken was really surreal. Because when I said, I'm not going to go, and I made that clear, that Richard, the person, said, well, they're going to take you anyway. So it wasn't like, oh, yeah, I'm just going to be able to decline and walk away. It was not easy at all. And, it helps, just the protector energy of, my kids gave me like a strength and a force in me. And the thing is, they didn't scare me. And they really pissed them off. They're like, you're not scared of us? I would, it was just, I just have to like go into the vibration of humor because I know they want my fear. And I said, even if you come after me and try and kill me, I'm just going to come back even more pissed off or like this and that. It's like, and have you watched, they're obviously interested in the paranormal. Like, guess what I can do maybe as a ghost or as a spirit. So, I wanted to scare them maybe a little bit. I don't even know if they have feelings, but I think it's a mixed bag. I don't consider them the enemy or anything like that. A lot of them are very well intentioned, but there were key players that were well-known disinfo agents like Richard Doty, and the whole list are probably individuals that some of you have heard of. John Alexander, who worked at Los Alamos. He's written a book, and he's known as the something weapons guy, silent weapons. So obviously like psychotronic weapons. And so normally, it wasn't like I was being blasted, but it was like, what I found out is they had a list of individuals that they would target and they would put in my path, and they were plants. And then they were able to also target partners that weren't necessarily on the list. And so this defector that helped me to understand was like, yeah, they have this list. And they're really to trip you up, right? So, that's great. And all, it doesn't like take away from the human experience of it, of, feeling the loss or like, why is this person turning on me? And then you just have to kind of remember, but I don't want to just be like, oh, it's because I'm targeted. But I've had like a mate before completely just turn and then through some assistance found out that they were targeting him to get to me. And even Judith Moore, who's an author, I'm sure some of you have heard of her, she started to channel this and she messages me. And I'm like, Judith Moore? She's like, oh yeah, the partner you're with right now is being mind controlled to assassinate you. So that was really awkward when he came home. I'm like, hi. And I'm like, I think I'm going to go for a drive, a really long drive. And it was obvious because his behavior and now that he's not with me, he's completely back to normal. And I'm like, this really is like kind of sucky. And so anyway, later I got this woman handed me this book, and it helped make some sense. And she said, I was reading, through this book, and there was this one part, and I think they're talking about you. You need to have this book. And so it's called Guardian of the Cell Worlds, and it hasn't been published. And it speaks in this book about their communication with Eisenhower and what took place under Truman. And my blog on cosmicguide.org has more about it. And it's about a migration of light lives. And this happened in 1952. And there were a lot of other migrations, and anybody who's here, it's like we all know that we came in for this time and that we have some kind of agreement. And so there was a major migration that happened in 1952, and there was just something mentioned, and I don't know if they're talking about me, and light lives are supposedly a higher intelligence. So I'm thinking, if I'm considered a higher intelligence, this world is in a lot of trouble because I'm not that. I might be able to see through stuff, but anyway. So this was part of the book. Yes, I did say a genetic search. What was never shared with military officials in the early 1953 was the star visitors, with the exception of this one man, was that an infiltration plan into human society worldwide was already in effect as of late 1952. This was through a surrogate program agreed upon between the star visitors and their native relatives on a global scale. This migration of many light lives to enter the newly born here amongst you all would become a new generation of people, each with a specific talent and soul memory imprinting of specific tasks to be carried out in your future. Again, this secret plan was shared only with this one man of great importance within the United States government. Only he fully understood the dire necessity for the whole truth to be told. He was offered a gift on behalf of the Guardians for his much appreciated, heartfelt understanding and assistance. A light life to enter his future family life was promised. And that lifeline did arrive, and today still continues the fight on his behalf for the truth to be known by all who are waiting. So, I mean, this woman hands me this, and I'm like, what? You know, when you're having like a really crappy week, or like not feeling so great about life or yourself, I was like, whoa, okay. And she's like, well, who else are they talking about? I'm like, well, all my family has really important work, but you know, are they really digging deep and going into the kind of stuff you talk about? I'm like, well, I mean, to me, you know, the family ties are, but I can understand because I definitely don't feel like I'm from here, and I'm just like, so it was a gift on behalf of the Guardians. That's awesome, along with a migration of a bunch of us, right? So we're like this team, and this was just the particular task. And it's funny because my book's called Awakening the Truth Frequency, and it's really not about like having all the answers or one immediate or like one definable truth. It's about living our truth. And I know this event is speaking a lot about authenticity and what it means to be true to ourselves. So it's just kind of reminders about that. And so this presentation is going to kind of take us into that, because this is what we're here for. And, you know, and it's really, I mean, we're activators. We're a resource to others when they begin to wake up and start to live their truth. We can help, you know, with the traumatic awakening process of how many people, it's going to be hard for them to just process how duped they've been, and it's understandable to a certain degree why it's so difficult to look at the horrific crimes against humanity, the child trafficking, the SRA, the MK Ultra. I mean, it's really, I can understand, but you know, it's not like it was easy for any of us. I don't know. It kind of got me bedridden for a little bit. Like, I can't get out of bed. This is just a lot. Even though I knew, you know, there was a lot going on before I came in, it's just something you can never get used to. And a lot of my clients and a lot of people I've gotten to know, I mean, Kathy O'Brien became one of my closest friends. I mean, wow. And yeah, and every time we do an interview together, I'm like, what should we call it? She's like, Soul Sisters Unite, and she, and a reunion, and then she messages me. I probably hear from her once every week or 2 weeks, and she's just sending love. You know, there'll be like a full moon or this, that. She's like, thinking about you today, and it means so much to me because she feels such a strong soul connection, and I mean, her strength and the light she carries is like mind-blowing. So I know, yeah, a lot of you have definitely heard of her. Yeah. And yeah, the first event that I met her at was in 2011, and I was like, oh my gosh, because she's just such a tremendous soul. I couldn't believe I was going to meet her. And she had a table next to me, and we gave each other a hug, and my necklace caught on her sweater, so we're like literally stuck together trying to and we're just like laughing and just like hugging, and it took a while to come undone, but it was funny because years later I interviewed her and she totally remembered, and we're just like laughing, like, yeah. And okay, so our lineage and cultural legacies that have been attacked, distorted, forgotten, or even infiltrated can be rehabilitated and healed. Doing this work can greatly impact the collective future generations and our ancestors. This is what so many of us are doing, and in doing so, we're able to help awaken divine purpose and remembrance in all humans to do the same and to be activators and embodiments of our divine inheritance. In doing this, it heals ancestral patterns and empowers and illuminates the wisdom of our ancestors. Claiming our divine sovereignty will help us to break free from the lies and distortions and help us to rise above rewritten or lost history. And it's really, I mean, all we really need to do is develop our bullshit meter by being true to ourselves. That is the ultimate way to strengthen that. Because if we're living our truth, we're going to be able to more easily see the truth, obviously. If we're living a distortion, if we're stuck in a belief system, we're only going to see things that reinforce it. And we're going to just build upon that, which society does, because it's putting those belief systems on us, so they're going to keep reinforcing it. And I noticed just in myself, if I believe something about me, I would see that coming at me, reinforcing it. If I felt stressed or anxiety or a little bit of fear here and there, or a lot sometimes, but temporary, because it's just, Okay, discernment, it's good to be cautious, but I'm not going to be a fear-based person. But I could just see how all the energy would change and my perception and what I would draw to myself. And when I was living on the road, taking care of my boys, didn't have a whole lot of money, every time I was like, okay, yeah, this is kind of, yeah, I felt some uncertainty. Nothing would improve at all. It just got worse. And then when I'm like, I'm totally abundant, I'm in the now, and I would just find a sense of empowerment and just feeling the freedom and like this is an open canvas, I can paint and co-create. Then boom, like miracles started happening. I started to draw really cool people. I even pulled $50 out of the ground, and my mom witnessed it one time when I was visiting. And I didn't really have a whole lot of money, and I needed enough to fly. And we were just driving in the car, and I'm like, get out. I said, I'm getting out of the car. We stopped at a stop sign. And I just ran over to the grass, and I just pulled out $50, and I came back in. My mom's like, are you shitting me? And like, you'd think like, it'd be nice if I could do that again. I don't know what I was doing that day that like gave me that ability. You might see me wandering around, like looking on the ground. But yeah, that doesn't like happen. But I know that in the right energy and frequency, whether it's that kind of thing or something else, I feel like this event's a miracle, just being together, just what we can manifest when we're just in that vibration. The universe provides. And so that was just kind of huge because I wasn't in the lack. I wasn't in the I'm broke or like I'm screwed. I was like, I'm abundant and, and so that was a good time when that happened. And I'm glad my mom witnessed it because, And then I went to the airport, and because I had changed the ticket, they needed $50 for me to be able to change, and it was just like, whoa, okay. Because I would have been stranded because she ended up leaving, and so, yeah, and even when the universe doesn't seem to provide, it does because of nature, because of what we can just shift in our own, perspective. So that wouldn't be a word to even want to empower that. Yeah, when it doesn't provide. Maybe when we think it doesn't, it still does, I guess is my point. So going back into some galactic history, during the Atlantic cataclysm about 26 to 30,000 years ago, this is when the planetary stargates, the planetary grids, and ley lines became controlled by the negative alien races. So yeah, this is some of the research, Keylontic science and Lisa Renee stuff. And I know everybody's kind of familiar with this, especially living in these areas, lots of grid workers, a lot of energy workers. This is one of the most significant countries, most powerful places. Of course, the stargates and the ley lines all over the world, but so much manipulation to the grids here because of the sacred union, the Michael Mary lines and the Albion body and the Cathar connection and how those energies were disrupted and the reversal grid technology that was put in place. So that through osmosis, we would be born with amnesia and we would just naturally sort of become that distortion. And then they perpetuate it all or make it worse through what we see on the television and the fake news. And we know how all that goes. So yeah. So later on, after all that, our DNA was unplugged, our memory erased, and this whole junk DNA. And this is when I really started to not pay attention in school. It's just like, seriously, that's pretty insulting just to call it junk when it actually holds higher harmonic universes and the energy of sacred union, alchemical marriage, and high organic union. When I found out that later, I'm not sitting there like, hey, but I knew that's not junk. It's just not junk. And when I really started to discover it, I'm like, yeah, so a lot of my presentations have been called, DNA, the greater love story of creation, because we are living a love story when we begin to switch that on and learning to divorce ourselves from the imposter and the tyranny and this false parent system that acts like it cares. It actually doesn't. It's like breaking up with a terrible partner. We would not want to be with an abuser, a liar, a cheater. We'd want to divorce that. So we're divorcing the system so that we can experience true love. And this is written in our DNA code. It's written in the planetary grid network, which we're a replica of, the true grid network that has this overlay and all these reversals and things that scramble the fire codes, but we can unscramble it when we really just honor the integration of polarity and love, because that's what removes the fences and the seals and begins to help us to switch on what's dormant. And as much as, people are like, yeah, we're going to switch on the 12-strand DNA. I mean, our bodies would change so quickly. Like, all of a sudden, it's like, whoo, you're a Merkaba now, flying out the window. So our physical might not get there, like, right away, but our consciousness can. And that's when we'll see improvements in our physical health. We're breaking the programming of what aging is, what, all these diagnoses and diseases. I'm like, these are terrible names. Why don't you call it, like, you have a case of transformational itis or something. Like, you're going through, instead it's, people carry these labels and they identify with these labels that on a vibration level sound like pretty horrendous, when to me it's a growth period. And if we can see the deeper roots of it, or what it's about, or what we're releasing, what we're holding on to, what ancestral pattern we might be clearing, what belief system is not in alignment with our physical body, if we really dig deep, we wouldn't be carrying, these disease labels. We'd be carrying, like, the potential of what we can step into, because that vibration will invite us more, I feel. So I never went to doctor. I was a terrible student and a terrible patient. It helped that I had a really creepy doctor to avoid the doctor. And so if I got sick, I'm like, no, I'm fine. And I would just put my hands in places like pain or any kind of illness. And I really started to go on journeys and just like go into the root of it and be like, whoa, that actually went away. And of course, the mega healers that are here and that we meet every day that are just way on top of it are just, gosh, you just would wish that this was just what society is. And it would just be like in the educational systems. It's so much what we're contending with and what our children are facing in this particular generation especially. So anyway, so DNA damage and just the loss of our memories. 5,500 years ago. The dark technologies, as far as the reversal grids, 26,000 years ago. But before all that, just being on Tara, being in Lyra, Orion Wars, Lyran Wars. Well, first the Lyra and then Orion and then Tara and then Tiamat exploding and then dropping down into this Eartha and Maldek exploding and this being seeded as an ascension planet. And to me, Mother Earth is the divine intervention to be like this planet, to nurture our souls back home, because this was, considered sort of a free will universe, and we'd experienced like ego, but we experienced hybridization, manipulation of incarnate consciousness, and a bunch of, as we know, these fallen ones that want to just take us down and be the imposter god energies that destroyed everything so that we feed them. They unplugged their DNA on purpose to maintain control. They didn't want their genetics to heal. And so their only way to get power and energy is by vamping off of us. And so we think these are power structures in the world, but they wouldn't have any of the power they have unless they stole it, unless they manipulated people out of it. So the good news for all of us, as we know, is we just need to call that back. And, when we're going through a breakup, because it is a bad partner breakup, it takes a little while, because it doesn't want to let us go very easily. Like some of those partners, they want to drag you to court, make your life living hell. It's like, no, we're done. But as long as we determine we're done and that energy is solid, I feel everything falls into place. And that's the beauty of like these kind of events and all of us coming together, because I'm like, I cannot wait until I meet like-minded people, because I know a lot of you probably had the same kind of thing when you just had nobody to talk to. And that's why it was easier to just like pretend that, I didn't pretend, but it wasn't hard to play the screw up, but but I mean, it's like, I'm doing this whether or not anybody hears it, because this is all I know. This is all I agree to. So anyway, block life force and kundalini, natural flow of all that, the glands, the pineal, the pituitary, hypothalamus, thyroid, all of this just continually being messed with, even, more so to this day. I mean, because they knew, and they were setting all this up for this particular window period. That's why the main grand finale for them is New World Order, and trying to convince well-intentioned people that, Agenda 2030 and climate change and all the globalist stuff, is actually a good thing. And the level of manipulation is just so disgusting. It's just to prey on people's good intent like this. But at the same time, it's like geoengineering. Jane Wigington's out there, like, those things, those planes, this is not an air show. And if you first thought that, and now you're saying contrails, it's so painful for people to imagine this. And then possible fake alien invasion, we've already been invaded. And you just voted for it. So, yeah, it's like, I hate to break it to you. Yeah, it's really awkward. Okay, so scrambled geometric codes and shortened lifespan, damage immunity, set up for recycling to astral 4D, just to come back and experience it again until we get it right. So the global grid systems have been some of the biggest issue that we're dealing with, the dark technology. So mass biological and mind control devices exist well beyond the technology of implanting tiny physical chips into humans, which accompanied many of the abductions by the Greys and non-benevolent Zetas. The non-benevolent Zetas are the ones that came up with the alternatives 1, 2, and 3 and presented that to Eisenhower's administration. And are also an impending application of such electronic devices by the one world government to the population. Even brain signatures radiated by government HARP and Gwen towers are relatively superficial compared with ancient existing global grid systems, which can be used for manipulating the evolution of all life on the planet, including the planet's evolution itself. So that's what I was picking up on. I'm like, going to Mars, I'm like, you know, this just doesn't make any sense. And why are you guys thinking you're in charge of this planet, first off? Or making these kind of decisions, or what? I mean, it just really doesn't make any sense. So this has to do with what I feel absolutely is this, and this timeline that I did not want to be on. And so all the grid works and just what we embody and hold is everything to, you know, shifting this. Like the Nephilim reversal grid, it's a technology, a massively complicated alien structure that has interfered with true spiritual marriage or Hyros Gamos as a possibility for human beings on the planet. Also, the Iberian Diotic crystal is another negative ET technology control network. And this affects the grids and have been placed in sacred sites such as Stonehenge. So it's been dismantled. I mean, the thing is, we're the advanced technology. We dismantle it within ourselves. We can only win the war within ourselves, because this is a war on consciousness. It's a war, a spiritual warfare. And to impact these incredible areas where the sacred union energies and the way the ley lines run, which you guys know way more than me, you know, Cornwall, Avebury, Glastonbury. I mean, I know enough, but the deeper details of it, I just know some speakers are here talking about it, and I can't wait to attend. But yeah, just this control network has just spread all over the world, and it's basically a part of what we get through our devices, what we get through the television, what we get through the entertainment industries, because we know that there's a dark underbelly to most power structures. And basically, once a person becomes addicted to the bait that is presented in all forms of manipulation and deception, the architecture of this control system hooks into you and takes your vital force. This is what feeds the technologies, and it also goes off planet. Our free energy has been used as a weapon against us. Different false archetypes are played out, and they're rewarded and encouraged in our society. And disclosure is obviously coming from us, and our job is to recover from the assaults, the social engineering, and thousands of years of trauma. And when I talked about the 5,500 years ago, the Sumeria, Egypt invasion, that's also when the mother energy wasn't anchored in the planet anymore, and we lost our connection to the mother energy. And it's just because of the cataclysms and all the exploding, like Maldek exploding and all the different Holocaust, like the Lemurian Holocaust, all these traumatic events happening. It's sort of like when we're traumatized and we leave our body. It's like the mother energy just couldn't like hold herself here. And what I feel is the Venus transits represent her heart, her unconditional love, creating the corrections. People talk about the Sophionic corrections, and this is just my thought, and I'm sure it's been, you know, mentioned, but when I was trying to connect dots, I'm like, that's got to be the correction. I mean, that's Venus. It's all about the mother, the heart of the mother. And right around 2012, 2010 is when the mother energy dropped back into the planet. That was the last Venus transit in 2012. So that just shows, even if she can't occupy the planet, she's like, I'm Venus love over here, creating corrections, and then I'm going to come back. And this is what they've been trying to avoid, the return of the mother. Nothing scares them more than our return to the mother energy. And I think somebody, they said, and Richard, the man that was he was being used to take me to Mars, one time he unplugged all the electronics. He said we were being bugged. There were webcams everywhere. They were watching everything we were doing. He unplugged everything. He's like, this is the only time I can tell you. And he's like, they know that you're going to be talking about this kind of stuff, and they've seen your website. That's a part of it. And he kind of leaked some things to me. Of course, when he put the equipment back together, he denied all of it, but I remembered yeah. I mean, it's just, that's a timeline that nobody can destroy. That's a part of the greater picture of even planetary alignments and different events that take place. Has always been about the mother energy returning. So all the distraction we're seeing is to get people away from that energy, to rewrite history, to confuse our relationship with that, which we've seen through, patriarchy and religion. Not at all being bad, of course, at all. I never think that. I think, it serves a lot of people really, really well. But there's dark aspects to it, and the masculine and feminine lives within us. I mean, we have both, obviously. So keeping us out of balance, Saturn moon matrix, and just any kind of imbalance is all they want. They don't care where it's coming from, as long as we're out of balance, because when we're out of balance, we are breeding ground for archonic forces and entity attachments. So, but as we know, we get into balance and we get back out of balance. It's kind of like cook a meal and create dishes, then you got to wash the dishes. So it's a work in progress every day to be in balance, and then lose balance and then get back. And so order, balance, it's just doing that energy work every day and just making sure that we give ourselves that time, because it's obvious in the physical world when things are messy, but sometimes it's hard to really know how maybe messed up our minds are, our emotional bodies, and our fire element. I mean, we're earth, air, fire, water, and ether. And that ether energy has not been so available, because when the mother energy left and the reversal energies were intact and in place, that energy was not available, and that's the great purifier. That is the great alchemical substance that helps us to clear the nucleic acids of our DNA and internally cleanse our elements, which I feel the earth responds to us. And so when we start to move into higher earth energies, it's because we've done the internal work. We're initiating, and we're seeing a different reflection back. But I think right now we're still willing to just be here for as long as it takes, and whatever our agreements are, right? I think some are going to choose to stay, some will bifurcate away, and some will, I'll get to that, I'm jumping ahead. But so the reversal mother is the anti-female collective consciousness of the satanics, whose accumulated collective consciousness is harvested by the negative alien agenda to gain energetic power from the earth grid and from humanity by hijacking and raping the female and mother principle energies. Thus, in order to gain full access to siphon the planetary consciousness energies as well as the human soul, they have set up the global misogyny and sexual misery programs that further spread the satanic forces to take power and control on the earth. This is the entropic system put in place in all controller pillars of society in order that they can continue to hijack all aspects of the female consciousness and all of its permutations, such as the fallen goddess consciousness energies, which gives them access to the earth energies in order to achieve their total control and enslavement agenda of humanity. So, I mean, it really is about the return of this energy. And when they talk about the fallen goddess energy, they're talking about Achamoth. And there's a lot of amazing quotes. Some are my favorite from Rudolf Steiner and obviously Lisa about the Achamoth. I'm not getting into it so much in this one, but that energy was pulled in. And when Tara and Tiamat exploded, which was a Sophionic planet, that was leveraged and used and harnessed. So that womb energy was used to birth archonic creatures. And we hear about the demiurge and this and that. But anyway, we just know that our whole society, and even the cities and the way that they were designed and how the cities are set up, are all to continue this reversal grid, like harvesting and siphoning. So we know, every time it seems when humanity is about to take a huge leap or there's amazing astrological alignments, it's like, oh, there's going to be a psyop or some kind of false flag to just completely pull the carpet from underneath us, right? It's like you can just feel the energy, and sometimes when it's like quiet, it's like, okay, you almost feel like something's coming. And even in one's own personal life, there's a lot of hijacking when we're really ready to move into certain zones that make us not accessible anymore, that there'll be massive increase in psychic attacks, so that they are attempting to make us exhausted and defeated and like, I'm really screwing up on my spiritual path. Why isn't this working? Well, it's because you're actually doing really, really good, and their last-ditch effort is going to be to try and pull the carpet underneath you like they do to the whole human race. I mean, everything that happened in 2019, 2020 was when Pluto, Saturn, and Jupiter were conjunct each other, and that represented a huge initiation and growth period for humanity to begin that divorce process and begin to cut the cords. But, you know, and hopefully want to have an open mind to conferences like this and others. And it was just the total hijacking. Fear of death, close up your mouth, don't breathe in the breath of life, the ether energy which is now available. And that scares the piss out of them. So cover that up and don't, you know, breathe in the air, fear the air. And I'm not saying that there wasn't a virus, and I'm not saying it's not appropriate to wear a mask when one feels the need to be safe. There's no right or wrong in all of this. But I think most people here would agree that it's pretty pandemic-y, right? I mean, we all know that. So I bring a little bit in about ET government treaties, because obviously with the way the manipulation of the planetary grid network and it coming from negative alien agenda groups, it's like, okay, well, they really started to get close to our government starting in the 1920s, the late 1920s and 1930s. So this is always something I like to bring in, and I'm not in a crowd of people that really necessarily need to hear it, but the amount of hate mail I've gotten for your great-grandfather sold us out to the Greys and all the abductions are because of him, and even to this day, I mean, it still goes on. And so I'm like, okay, well, if that's the case, I'm going to talk about it. This needs to be talked about. And when I was first doing events, I would go into it, but I'm like, you know, he's just a man, though, and how could it all be up to him? And isn't there this shadow government? I mean, one person would not be able to do that. And if he was trying to take down the Nazis, why would he agree to this? Well, if he did sign, it's probably because they have massive technologies and they have like big black eyes and they're probably, like, God only knows. I mean, I know that he wouldn't have wanted to, right? But then I found out more information. It's kind of like when you have that curiosity or you just know you're not done and you're just being led to find out more. Especially through synchronicities, a lot more information began to come. And starting with Lisa Renee, this is what she said, which was like, whoa. And I'm sure, I don't know if you guys have heard this about Churchill, but Aleister Crowley, who's obviously very dark black magician, sort of like Atlantean, when the fall of Atlantis, and just one of those dark overlord energies, manipulation with like the rituals and pulling in souls and just doing all this kind of stuff in his connection with the Greys. Crowley, Churchill, and Hitler. Supposedly Churchill had Hitler mind controlled. That has to do with the Tavistock Institute. And this was the connection that established the Grey Alien Agreements with the government. Yes, they said Churchill actually met the aliens while he was prime minister, and the beginning of the technology trade, and Churchill and the UK wanting it for world domination. That led to human experiments such as mind control through psychotronics and time travel. And obviously this is all over the world, and I mean, this agenda is like way deeper and it goes way back. This is just like one stage of it. Churchill, I mean, and I don't doubt, if anybody's familiar with Lisa Renee, if it was from another source, not to say I wouldn't question it, but, you know, I don't like to have fixed beliefs because I just want to always keep my mind open. If I ever need, you know, if I find out anything that I shared isn't correct, I'll be the first to say it. Like, but I just, her information and how it connects with so much more that I research does make sense. But there's a lot of great Churchill quotes out there. I mean, God only knows, though, he might have been a clone and possessed. I mean, so it's, to me, when it comes to the negative alien agenda, it's not even about the people anymore, because most people that are willing to do this sort of thing are not even, their soul, it's more than likely not there anymore, and something has taken over. So anyway, Churchill did not have racial sympathies and had even less compassion for the general masses. It was during his influence that he was one of the men that allowed 5,000 or so children to be abducted from poor areas and gave the Greys the right to genetic testing of the population. According to the Guardians, when they took something like 10 times that amount, they knew that they were in over their head and they could not control what they had led the world population into. So yeah, it might have just been an agreement, and then it got out of control. But supposedly, you know, there was things that happened also in World War I, and these sort of things were already taking place. So they continue to renew them, or they find some new host on a human level. And then, yeah. So after the Second World War, and this is what's crazy, and this is why it's so difficult for people to wake up, because this is not in the history books. It's not like Chapter 3, Project Paperclip. Chapter 4, Galactic History. And period 4, or period 5, or whatever. Now we're going to learn about mind control, kids. No, it's like, you're going to be indoctrinated in mind control. Have a nice day. And it's all like rooted in not winning the war and having it come over, Project Paperclip, and it spread its tentacles pretty much all throughout the world. And Morgan Martell discusses on his website about Project Paperclip, which took place after the Second World War. One purpose of the operation was to inhibit post-war Germany from redeveloping its military research capabilities. One of the fields that Nazi doctors and psychologists had made advances in was that of social and behavioral engineering in humans, also known as mind control. So this is the war. We're still, like, in a sense, when people talk about World War III, it's like we're still kind of in World War II. It never really ended. And the beauty is that what we are able to recover from when we're not being manipulated like this is we are the victory of winning the war. And that's just a wonderful thing, because when we break free of that, our creative channels aren't infected anymore. And everything just begins to change, and we're really working with the true powers that be, which is the power of the human spirit, this planet that we're on, and our whole divine blueprint, Mother, Father, Christ, Sophia, whatever, we all have. Okay, so the OSS, Office of Strategic Studies, resorted to whitewashing the histories of Nazis, or sometimes even creating entirely new identities, which made it easy for them to spread their influence in America. In 1946, President Truman authorized Project Paperclip. And so I was hearing about Greada Treaty in 1954. It was when the Greys met with the governments and the abductions began. So many, many resources have said otherwise. And one person that I met, Dan Cooper, I met like 2 years ago. I had done an interview or a roundtable with Dan Willis and Elena, and he's just in the comments just saying, no, something about some of the information that Dan shared. Dan Willis shared, Dan Cooper corrected in the comments. And I couldn't believe how detailed his information was. I'm like, who is this guy? And I'm like, hey, I'm Laura, and I'm curious about what you're sharing. And I'm like, here's my email. It'd be great if you would reach out to me. And he immediately did. He's like, hey, it's Dan Cooper. And for 2 years, we've had a back and forth. So I probably have 80 text messages, maybe 50, 60, 80 emails back and forth. And he's very generous with his time. I've tried to reach out to him recently. He hasn't gotten back to me, which is really rare. But he's the senior advisor to the Earth Alliance. And I don't have his big bio. It's going to be in my book and a lot more of his information. But, I knew about the UFOs flying over D.C. in 1952. But what's amazing about hearing about this in 1952, that's the same year that this migration of light lives came in. And all those that would play a particular role is the same year that there was an unconditional surrender to the Nazis. So according to Dan Cooper, who claims to be the senior advisor to the Earth Alliance, the U.S. surrendered to the Nazis unconditionally on July 19, 1952. And this was under the Truman administration, and something Eisenhower wasn't willing to go along with. His two Nazi commanding officers in Dark Fleet, he did a 20 and back, he was in Dark Fleet, but then what they can do as super soldiers is direct them towards the positive. And this is connected to something that actually Eisenhower set up with the help of Al Thor. And so Project Moonshadow, Project Mannequin, some of these super soldier programs, the USMC Special Section was able to divert it into the more positive. And Randy Kramer, if anybody's familiar with him, he was in the USMC Special Section. So I'm not really getting into that but in this presentation. But anyway, his two Nazi commanding officers in Dark Fleet and his white hat U.S. Navy Vice Admiral, who he said most of the white hats used to be dark, and then they turned white, told me what the terms of unconditional surrender instrument of the U.S. surrendering to the Nazis on July 19th, 1952 were. One term divested the power to sign treaties with alien species into the hands of MJ-12. Hence, Dwight could not have possibly signed any agreements with any alien species. He did not have the legal power to do so. He wasn't even allowed to attend the negotiations. What to speak of being made privy to the terms of those agreements. That is how I know what Elena said to you about MJ-12 going behind Ike's back is true. So, I mean, that's a lot, of blame since the 50s. And that's just, they want to hide behind things. And somebody who, didn't have anything to do with it is the main person, if you search the internet, that's being blamed for these treaties. So when I met Dan Cooper, I'm like, oh my gosh, I was just really happy to just have that confirmation. So there's Val Thor. Val Thor and Eisenhower had quite the relationship. So Elena put this in her book. I wrote the foreword. And I'm kind of like the kind of person that takes what resonates, and if something doesn't, I don't let it sink in too much. So when I quote people, I'm not necessarily 100% on board with everything they share. I'm 100% on board and like complete love and appreciation and respect. But if something doesn't feel right, I mean, that's all that it is. We're all doing the best we can. But she's, an amazing person. And I just haven't read fully all her books to be able to speak much more, except for the Val Thor stuff. And it's funny because she's having a conversation with Val Thor about me, and I'm like, I'll sit there many nights just like talking to the sky, like, you want to take me up on one of your ships? Like, because I keep hearing messages through people. I want a little bit more direct, but that's okay. So time's probably not right, because I think they know I'll probably be like, I don't want to go back down, unless like I land here, like with you guys or something. And of course, my children, my husband. There's a lot of beautiful things. But anyway, so Elena says, Commander Val, after I first met you for the first time, I had the privilege to connect with President Dwight's great-granddaughter, Laura. We spoke about you and about what happened with the treaties. She knew the truth deep within herself, and she was glad you could confirm it. Val Thor replies, Laura, yes, I know who you're talking about. I met her once, but she didn't know it was me. I vowed to look after Dwight's descendants. She came to restore the truth. She needed to learn about the faces and the plans of the enemy, but I always protected her all along, and so did Dwight until this day. And I'm just like, whoa. And I'm like, I'm so sorry, I'm so difficult to protect. I get myself in some crazy situation. And I'm wondering if they're just like, love you, but can't really do this much more. But no. Yeah, so I mean, just feeling that. And then I'm thinking, doing life review, like, who was that I might have met? And was it the guy on the train that was like glowing? Was that Val Thor? I'm like, why wouldn't he tell me? Like, can't you just tell me? But anyway, so that meant a lot to me to hear that. There were some other parts I left out, but yeah, and we all have our guides and protectors, and that's so this is not the kind of information that was easily spoken about. So this to me was something that I would end up, finding out, and I think this is what I've been encouraged to discover all along. So Ike had no choice, is what Dan says, but to openly comply with the official instrument of surrender, the unconditional surrender of the United States to the Nazis, signed by all of Congress and most of the prominent businessmen of the period on July 19, 1952, when he was president, when Truman was president. He opposed the instrument of surrender of 52 secretly by establishing various military and civilian covert units for that purpose. One of them was Ike's Force, also known as the USMC Special Section, which survives today. In fact, that U.S. military unit is the most successful military unit opposing the interplanetary corporate conglomerate Nazi Draconian Empire alliance. And he ordered the first attack on the Greys, the deep underground military base at Dulce, New Mexico, knowing that he would lose that battle just to learn more about his enemy and to test his best against them. They, the U.S. Army Rangers, also the Green Berets, lost 30-1 back then. This battle at this deep underground military base of the Greys occurred more than a decade before the one reportedly to have occurred in 1969 and was a much larger engagement. Several thousand U.S. Special Forces troops engaged against the Grey forces, then and nearly half of them lost their lives. And that's wild, because if you look this stuff up, you just don't hear this stuff. I only heard about the Phil Schneider Dulce Wars. And Phil Schneider was exposing a lot of stuff, but he was saying that Eisenhower signed the treaties. So I'm talking to Dan, I'm like, well, what about what Phil Schneider had to say and William Cooper? They were really incredible whistleblowers. And he said, well, as well-intentioned as they were, they're not going to find out this information. They're not going to be given that information just because they worked on underground military bases or they were in some kind of position because of compartmentalism and the top secret being way above the president. They're not just going to hand it to just anybody. So they convinced a lot of whistleblowers of this false narrative. And to me, how can we heal as a humanity if we're dealing with rewritten history? It's like, how would we heal as grown-ups if we had false childhood memories or we are told something that happened that actually didn't? we'd be searching our soul, and we'd just not maybe feel the emotionality. We might not feel any connection. We might not dig deep and feel a release because it didn't happen, but we're being told it happened. But sometimes we can believe something and find emotions connected to it. So, I mean, we're doing this on a personal level. We need to do this on a global level, because when they throw out the next narratives connected to fake alien invasions, it's going to be really important to know what truly happened, what positive military forces are on our side, what the history of ETs have been on the planet, so that when their stupid fake alien invasion comes, while we're all eating whatever, popcorn or something, and everybody else is just like reacting to it, we'll be like, we're still over here, you know, you're welcome to join us. We're really loving, and we know how much it sucks to have to wake up to this, but it's also liberating, and it's also wonderful, because we're waking up to love, we're waking up to truth, we're waking up to the greater abilities that we get to switch on, and it's a reunion. There's so much to look forward to, and it's just the breakup process is ugly and difficult when you find out that your partner is a cheat and a liar and an abuser, which is our system, and a lot of well-intentioned people that are caught in it that can get unstuck. I mean, think of all the blackmail. Think of all, I mean, just learning so much about super soldiers. People have experienced satanic ritual abuse and MK Ultra, the stories they tell, and the blackmail, you know, drugging people, filming it, using it against them. And a lot of them don't feel like they can get out without maybe being like condemned and hated by the public for what they've done. But the more we understand trauma-based mind control, MK Ultra, and SRA, and all of that, the more we can have our open arms to encourage them to walk away. And there's no judgment on whatever film that they're going to show if you were put in that scenario. Because it's like, if we're going to heal, we need to like really heal in that kind of way. And there are a lot of brave people are already calling that stuff out that were put in those positions. So I supposedly also established the White Hats, the first of which were Texan U.S. generals and admirals. That's where the name White Hats came from. Ike's White Hats are the one that brought Ronald Reagan into the fold. This is kind of a lot to read. I know this is on film, so I mean, there's. I think the next one is just going to go into it a little bit more deep. This is just about some of the other presidents. Like Barack Obama also made an attempt to disclose it, and obviously something not right happened with that guy. So the Sphere Being Alliance is who Val Thor helped connect Eisenhower to, the Guardians. And they agreed to assist us. And I convinced them that we were worth saving, is what Dan Cooper said to me. And so they put a force field around the planet, and it didn't get initiated until December 14th, 2014. And actually, this is something Corey Goode talked about. And Dan Cooper, you know, mentioned that part of Corey's story is actually true. And I don't want to say anything more. Anybody who's researched him or kind of seen some crazy stuff emerge, it's just really difficult when you're dealing with these kind of influences. People can get overtaken, but you know, I don't know quite what happened there, but yeah, so the Sphere Being Alliance, which are the Guardians that Dan communicates with, put this outer barrier around, which means that they can't leave, and that's why they're freaking out. They actually cannot escape. So there was a time where the Draco Alliance and, you know, part of their plan was, well, if this big massive awakening is happening, you know, we're just going to get the F out of here. And now that they can't leave, they're doing everything they can to make life pretty miserable, but they will be like captured. And I mean, I don't know. Sometimes I'm like, can you just get them off of this planet? But it's in our benefit in many ways. And I'm not going to read all of this, but this is very interesting because Commander Valiant Thor, who's from Venus, who's not a Nordic, said that the Nordics are located in the inner Earth, and they are but one of 7 different nations down there. The Nordics gave the Nazis a city down there. It's called New Berlin, and it's still here to this day, and it's still occupied by Nazis. The Nordics are genetic purists, just like the Nazis, even today. The Nordics made a treaty with the Draconian Empire to end the war between them some 500 years ago. That treaty is called the Mohammed Accord. Amongst other terms of the Mohammed Accord, the Nordics agreed not to interfere with the Draconian dominance over humanity. So first contact with the Nordics was by the Nazis no later than 1929. That's when the Nordics gave them a city. And Commander Valiant Thor warned the U.S. in 1952 when Truman was president about the Nordics, and he also warned about the Greys. So he said that the Nordics were in bed with the Nazis. If you read and research this, you'll hear that the first contact was with the Nordics, and it was a positive thing that was turned down. So this is very different information. Commander Valiant Thor also warned the U.S. in 1952 about the Greys. Most people hear that Val Thor didn't enter the picture until the late 1950s, and it's true that he was put on VIP status at the Pentagon. That's what Eisenhower did, but they were already in contact, from what Dan says, and that they were warned about both the Nordics and the Greys. So we're getting completely different, a bunch of information. First contact was with the Nordics, but Eisenhower decided to sign a treaty with the Greys, and that's where the abductions came from. So meeting Dan and just being like just really feeling, his intensity, because every time I was like, well, are you sure about this? And then he's just, how many times do I have to tell you? I'm like, okay. Just because, not that I necessarily believed in the other stuff, but it's been spoken about from so many researchers, so many people, and it's because of the whistleblowers that didn't have access to this kind of information. And so, so not the Nordics or the Greys, but as we know, there's not all bad in one species. So talking about reptilians or Nordics or Greys doesn't mean they're all negative, as we know. They're just different factions, different groups, different alliances. There's plenty of benevolent and everything, as same with the human race, of course. So that's quite a bit of information, and just to kind of move this along, the main points I just wanted to bring out was, the warning, 1952. Then the unconditional surrender agreement happened, and Eisenhower and Val Thor stayed connected, and he helped him set up all this positive stuff. And so we hear, I ask him, when we hear about the bases being cleared out and all the activity of the White Hats, he says a lot of that is disinformation, it's not true, but the White Hats are doing a lot. They can't reveal a lot of what they're doing, but there's, we're not getting, we get a lot of muddied information, but we are the disclosure, we are the Great Awakening, we are the shift. So whatever is going on out there, we're shifting it from the inside out, not from the outside in. So it's more important that we just enjoy that. So Dan also said he knows a lot about Commander Valiant Thor from his sources, the White Hats. He did in fact advise Ike for years, specifically how to defeat the ICC Nazi Draco alliance and end their dominion over humanity. The Venetians, Commander Val Thor is a Venetian from the planet Venus in our solar system, themselves were and are very Christian. They were adamantly opposed to violence. They were the ones that told Ike about the Sphere Being Alliance, the Guardians, and they contacted the Guardians and submitted Ike's petition for the Guardians' help to save humanity. There's so much more to tell about Val. Val Thor merely advised Ike. Val Thor did not speak to Dan directly, but he spoke with the Guardians, and the Guardians speak to Dan. And so, I mean, to save humanity, we're saving ourselves. But this protective barrier keeps other influences from coming in, and it keeps them from being able to leave. So we're just doing the cleanup. We're just dealing with it now. And the most important thing is calling out the mind control, the manipulation, and the psyops, and the indoctrination, and what they're trying to do to our children. And that's why I just love the name of that book, Children Do Not Belong in School. Schools are not for our children. So anyway, the conversation goes on. This is all like in Facebook comments. I'm like you, Laura, I was appalled at the fact that the U.S. had so readily surrendered unconditionally to the draconian empire's lackeys, the Nazis, and that every president since Truman, including Ike, had kowtowed them since. When he explained his disgust to his retired U.S. Navy Vice Admiral about this, he said, but Dan, they were a million years ahead of us technologically. We had no choice but to surrender to them. So I wouldn't be so hard on Ike for kowtowing to the Draco Alliance in his time if I were you. He did more than any other person did or could do to assure that the Earth Alliance victory over the Draco Alliance would take place. The Guardians assure me that we prevail in the Earth Alliance's conflict war with the ICC Nazi Draco Alliance. Why else would the Guardians have wasted their time and resources coming here if that weren't the case? Does that in short answer your question, Laura? I'm like, yeah. So every president since Truman were threatened with death. And that's why I think that my mom's generation were kept in the dark, because that was a really, really dangerous time for this kind of information to come out. Now there's just too many of us. And we know how to die and come back. How many times we go through the dark night of the soul death and we keep remaining in our physical body somehow. I mean, anyway, so with all this being said, we're still dealing with AI. Artificial intelligence systems have been designed and weaponized, specialized for emotional and ultimately spiritual harassment. This is so that the emotional and spiritual energies get lowered to the level that a machine can entrain, follow, mimic, match, record, modify, and replicate that energetic blueprint. If our consciousness is above this and not in the programming, we aren't as impacted. So the assimilation into AI, artificial intelligence, it's not coming from us. It's not divine wisdom. So, everything coming at us constantly, everything being external, just is, we already have been in that. But, when we look at the possible chipping, which they really do plan on doing, and 5G and all these dark technologies, yeah. But I feel that if we bite into the bait, that is the real dark weapon. And if we're the override frequency and we're the more advanced technology, we crush the dark technology. Because we're surrounded by it, right? And we've been exposed to it. We grew up with the TV. We grew up in the school systems. And so once you override it, I really feel that you crush it. We become the override frequency. And I call us the 5D towers instead of the 5G towers, because it's our throat chakra speaking truth and the frequency of truth, the frequency of love and unity, overcoming these dark technologies. Because if we look at, if it was enough to just blast us with the dark weapons, they wouldn't bother with the indoctrination or the crap that we see on the news and all the lies and distortions. They would just blast us with weapons. They would just, they've tainted our food. They might be impacting that. If that was enough, then they wouldn't bother with the other stuff. It's the other stuff that's the real enemy or the real weapon. Because once we buy into the bait, the dark technology actually works in us because it begins to assimilate us because we're hooked in. If we're not hooked in, I feel we neutralize it and we remove it from our bodies. It just naturally is expelled because our body recognizes it as foreign because it's not in alignment with our truth. So the body rejects it in whatever way. But if we're buying into the indoctrination, the divide and conquer, and believing just what comes through the news, and you've, then the dark weapons really work to keep you in that state so that they can continue to siphon and harvest the energies, because that's really what it's for. Because they need to lower our vibration to a level that they can feed on. They can't really feed on our light. They like to target it and mess with us so that we're exhausted and we're sick of it and we're just like, I'm done. But that's obviously not going to work. So we are that more advanced technology. And they're the ones actually super frightened of us. And so I know a lot of people talk about this, but going down into that lower energy, we're all going to experience that. Obviously, we're humans. We're not really humans, but we're in this human body. So yeah, we're going to experience all this. And to me, it's important to feel into all that. And I think sometimes having guilt and shame is better than not giving a crap, but we just don't want to remain there, right? I think it's important that, when we feel it, we embrace our unconditional love and forgiveness of ourselves and each other. We process through it, we release it, we raise the vibration of it. But I think, cutting off our feelings or being like, oh, there I go again. We need to feel it to heal it. So I feel like we drop down in order to climb back up. And if we recognize that vibration when we're down and we avoid just masking it or getting so plugged into the artificial matrix that we just numb it, we can climb back up. And so one of the speakers was talking about anger, and anger, that release, begins to just push us into these, other energies. But to get out of the lower energies, they need to be released. Like grief, right? That's kind of a low vibration. But how can we avoid grief? There's so much to grieve about a lot of the time. But to me, because we're elemental, I call it it's monsoon season in my elemental body right now. That's why I might be crying a lot, because it's raining. The sky rains. The clouds fill up. And if Mother Earth does that, so do we. There's volcanoes. I warn the villagers when my volcano is about to explode. It's like, everybody run for cover. So we're elemental beings, and I feel that's the truth that we need to embrace. And the blocking of it or the pushing it down has been what has been the root of a lot of illness and disease. And as long as we can redirect or direct these energies wisely, we're in good shape. Because anger is passion. But can we direct that towards our passion? If we're angry about something, we're passionate about something. So maybe we're the ones that need to step up and do something, because that anger is fire and that's a force. If it's just anger without action, it can really eat away at us. So all these things, to me, point out what our greater soul journey is and what our mission is all about. If we're grieving, we have a soul longing we need to answer. So our body's alerting us through pain, through difficulty, through these negative emotions to get our attention so that we give it the respect. Well, what do you want? Because I remember just being like, experiencing a whole plethora of different feelings and emotions. Then I'm finally, I'm going to interview myself. Like, what the heck do you want? Like, why are you so like this? And then it's like, whoa, it's like my mission started to really reveal itself to me. Instead of just, like just being in that low energy. And then, my mom's like, don't you think you should go on antidepressants? And I'm like, no, I cry for the world. Leave me alone. It'll pass one day. So anyway, not to say that it's a terrible thing to have assistance when we need it, because it can be very hard to function. That's why I lived on the road and took a lot of time off. I'm like just needing the space and room to process. Really hard to show up at work when you're going down just major death cycles and underworld journeys that you can't really call and say, I'm in the underworld right now. No. So anyway, rewiring our DNA, and this is like the truth frequency and just all the sound healing and all the incredible energies and just positive self-talk. We can absolutely shift our genetics. So epigenetics is the science is proving that our body's ability to heal and repair itself is greatly affected by our beliefs, thoughts, emotions, and intentions, for they have a profound vibrational effect upon our continually evolving genetic code. We're the programmers of the code. DNA activation is our software upgrade. And this is what they want to do, is infect our creative channels so that we have dumbed down DNA, that we are enabling a future that we don't want to participate in. People don't realize how much they're enabling it, how infected they are by it, and how much they are in a co-creative process, because it wouldn't manifest if we weren't giving it the power, because they're vampiric. They can only steal our power and our dreams and our creative energy and write the script that people think is being human. We're just going through this, there's a virus and all this stuff, and this is just, I'm like, did you guys not heard of the ascension window period? Did you think that it'd look like this? No. It's a great initiation is being hijacked, and it's being weaponized, and all the planetary alignments they're aware of, so they come up with the psyops that will meet the shadow energies of that alignment. Anyway, diversity and harmony, restoring the tree of life, 7 root races, 5 cloister races, 7 plus 5 is 12, 12-strand DNA. And this is the unity consciousness. I mean, obviously it's coming together, being a family and community, but it's switching each other on. We carry different codes, different energies, different root race energies. And we're just here to switch each other on. We are given our zodiac map, and to me, all the patterns are bringing us into the 0-point unified field. And the more we understand the patterning, the more we can override the ones that keep us looping or stuck, and we can begin to see what's actually really working. I mean, every chart I see, it's just like everybody has that ability to just be like in their mastery, in their avatar consciousness. It's all there. But it's like if somebody's over here and that's over there, and you don't know it's over there because nobody encouraged it, nobody validated it, you got in trouble for it, you got ridiculed. I mean, every single person holds, we just have different storylines to get there. And sometimes we get so attached to the storylines, but most things are experienced in order to switch all this on. And we got to just get the power of our perceptions back, so that we aren't victimized by it. I mean, some things don't make sense, and there is the energy of we can feel victimized, but rising above it into that warrior mode, knowing that we're born into a gaping wound, this humanity. We're all taking bits of that greater wound and going through our storylines in order to rise above and heal and do things that might seem impossible. It's like when a doctor says you'll never be able to walk again. Oh yeah? How many people have been able to actually walk again? The miracle stories are just so amazing to hear. And we're just going to keep coming back until we get all that back. And so the initiations, like for example, the outer planets are very initiatory. Like Uranus is the planet of shock and upheaval, but it leads to great awakening, right? But when you're in the shadow of it, it's panic attacks, PTSD, nervous breakdown. We lose like our connection. We're just like, so when Uranus wants to strike, because it's like lightning strike, it's like time for a major download. But if, you're running a lot of anxiety, it might mean you're holding on to something that's not allowing that to come through, because it connects with our higher mind, our authenticity and truth. And so a lot of times it'll shock us, like it feels out of our control, but it always is a blessing in disguise or an upgrade. Even if it's an illness or an accident or an injury, which is very much sometimes Uranus coming along and being like, I'm going to shake up your world, shake up your life. And how many people have said that injury or that illness actually woke me up? I got a chance to step away from my job, step away from everybody, and like go float in like these higher dimensions and connect with spirit and connect with my body and like learn to heal. Not everybody, has that, but eventually everybody will, because that's always going to be there. We all have access. And anytime that we're ready to really go there, we can see the blessing. But often Uranus will just bring about synchronicities. It's the planet of synchronicities. When we are able to accept what our higher mind is bringing in, what nature, cosmic natural law, our connection with source is wanting to bring in, we are adaptable, we're able to change, we're able to evolve. And the more stuck we are, we're in that sort of dark Saturn. And so the dark Saturn energy is very much the tyranny and the control. But Saturn's asking us to become in our self-mastery. That's the higher octave, is that we go through the trials and tribulations like it's a freaking spiritual obstacle course. We learn to fly over the obstacles instead of continually hit our head and just forget, like we are moving to these higher levels of the planetary energies. Neptune and Pisces, consciousness freedom, creative imagination. The shadow of it is fear viruses, mind viruses, disinfo, confusion, all designed to infect our creative channels. It's also self-undoing, but you almost have to undo yourself to rebuild it on your own terms and based in your own truth, what your intuition is telling you. And that's the most important thing to develop. So Neptune's going to help us to tap into our dreams and our visions, and then we want to ground it, anchor it, and be that 5D tower that brings it into manifestation through speaking it, and not letting anything else in, doing that clearing work. Pluto and Capricorn, we've got it retrograding in there right now, and it's going to move back into Aquarius in 2024. And that's like the death of the matrix control and all about transformation. But yeah, it's not so easy on a larger level right now, but that's really what this is about, Pluto. But the shadow, suicidal thoughts, heavy energy, darkness, stuck in the birth canal, not wanting to get out of the cocoon. And what happens when we resist these energies? Our immune system is lowered, we get hijacked, our energies get siphoned, we feel hopeless, lost, and confused. We're in survival, we're reactive, we're ungrounded. And from that place, we make not the best of decisions. So we need to increase our spiritual immune system, heal our mental and emotional bodies, and the physical will follow. And as we know, just all the amazing true medical leaders out there, and just, changing what we put into our bodies and thoughts and people everything is energy, and just having our boundaries and not giving an F what other people think. Except for like the healthy kind, of caring. But so when we see this, when we experience it, we have to know, like, okay, this is a shadow element of a planetary energy going on, can help kind of snap a person out of it. Sometimes we're deficient, and sometimes it's nutritional, like why we can't, move into all of this. But all these things are what is available with these initiatory planets. We're born with them in our charts. Some people have personal planets next to the outer planets, and some experience it in their life, and it can either wake them up or it can put them in the shadow elements that make them addicted to the medical industry, dependent on the system, dependent on pharmaceuticals, and they never get to the flip side of what these initiations represent. So anytime there's a planetary alignment is usually when the shadow side of that planetary alignment is leveraged to create a psyop. And so obviously they know all that kind of stuff. So the rings of Saturn, according to David Icke, are a massive broadcast system broadcasting a fake reality. DNA holds all the information we will ever need to build and maintain the human body. Researchers at Boston University and Harvard Medical School studied the 98% of our DNA that remains unable to be decoded is called trash DNA. So with amnesia, with all the supposed junk DNA and all the distortions of the masculine and feminine, teaching men not to cry or get in touch with that, and everything that they're doing, is what's being broadcast. Saturn moon matrix, how the artificial component of the moon, you got the Saturn energy, it's very much the tyranny, the exiling and the silencing of the feminine. And that's really just something within us, both of those energies, to override how they utilize planetary forces to create this imbalance, because it helps us, if we have a chart, to stay stuck in the shadow element of it until we can step away and know the game being played. Then we can work with it. We don't have to necessarily know our chart, but like say somebody holds a Saturn square moon or has the Saturn moon matrix very amplified in their chart. You know, once we get over the lower octaves of it and we heal that within ourselves, we crush that dark technology. We are no longer in the 3D, which is just our lower chakras, which is where they want to keep us stuck. And then we're like on a completely different trajectory. So Stephen Flowers, in his book on the German magical order Fraternitas Saturni, reported that the Fraternities Saturni holds the view that Lucifer is regarded as the higher octave of Saturn, the outermost planet and polar opposite of the sun in ancient cosmology. Because of this ongoing opposition, Lucifer is still fighting the solar logos. Supposedly, Saturn used to be a sun. The principal battlefield is our Earth, which contains a negative astral and a positive mental sphere. I don't know why actually this is in here, because to me, the higher octave of Saturn is really self-mastery, because we're ultimately redeeming Lucifer from within. I mean, we are carrying the inheritance of a lot of these pantheons, a lot of these different archetypes. And to me, the Luciferian energy is just false light, negative ego. So I wouldn't consider that the higher octave. I don't know what that slide's doing there. Not to say, Stephen, I don't agree, but while the rings are still there, the higher octave is still not completed its reconnection with the solar. But astronomers have noted that the rings of Saturn are dissolving. And somebody also noted that they're just going to blow up the moon. I don't know. So there goes the Saturn moon matrix. And the higher octaves of the lunar energy. There is still ancient energies connected to the moon. The 13 moon calendar, there's ancient aspects to the moon connected to Tiamat. But the leveraging of the artificial components, because of the traumas that we carry, because of this unconsciousness to those traumas, makes it really, really hard to heal. So again, being born with amnesia, not knowing what to do with the ancient trauma that we all carry that we don't fully remember, just makes it easy for people to stay addicted to the matrix dependency system. So because Saturn isn't made good without our willingness to do alchemy, we need to know that our salvation is taking on the task of becoming masters, like self-mastery, not controllers, not victims of enslavement. We're either under the rulership of Saturn, we become the controller like Saturn, or we change the energy of Saturn, which is the willingness to be on a path of mastery, and it is where we can be the true guide. It clears our emotional water so that we can connect to lunar forces that aren't so dominated. We get our power back, the power of our intuition and the clear waters of psychic seeing. The higher octaves of the lunar energy are like Neptune and Uranus, takes us into our higher mind, helps us to clear, this lower lunar energy connected to the moon lineages, which are a part of the negative alien agendas. So, so the way they also, with the manipulation of the planetary grid network, we're healing this all within ourselves. So some people might be Capricorns, right? Or have a lot of Saturn in their chart. But the higher octave of Saturn to me is like, like the goat. My North Node is in Capricorn. I got a bunch of goats. I was a goat mama. The mother goat died in my arms, and then I raised these 3 babies. And I was just like, whoa. It was just so incredible to be with the goat energy, right? But they associate it with like, this kind of like this devil energy or the Capricorn Saturn energy. That's just the lower octave, and that's just a misrepresentation. We're really contending with this energy within ourselves, and it's an archetype. So anybody who's done a lot of tarot, you're going to run into that. I'm sure you've all gotten the devil card before, and it's just about feeling bound to something, being maybe living in fear, domination and bondage, being caged by an overabundance of luxury. Discretion should be used in personal and business. Okay, so this is an example of the card. And so if you add 1 + 5, that's 6, which is the Lover's card. This is where I feel the devil is redeemed, and that Luciferian energy or any kind of dark connotation of the devil is redeemed. Because in numerology, if 1 + 5 is 6, which is the Lovers, that's kind of like the Kundalini and the rising of that energy. And the inverted pentagram, which has the horns, turns upright again, because love is the substance of alchemy. So I feel that the Venus transits are the corrections on the planet to reverse that symbolism and the manipulation of the ether element, which has not been available to us. And I feel that love, true sacred union love, is what takes us away from the bondage or the mind control or the influences of this, which can manifest differently for people. Some are just like all about it and jump right into it. And some feel very harmed by it, like upright, unhealthy relationships. For some, it's not materialism is evil, but, obviously if you're exploiting people and you're just, whatever, right? Reverse, freedom from restraints, breaking from addictions, and divorce, right? So we're the reverse devil having a divorce with the satanic system. And that's love. Love is pulling us out of it and going through whatever death we need to go through. So upright endings, profound change, letting go of attachments, transformation. And reverse just means it's like that shadow side, not being able to emerge, being afraid to emerge. People are afraid of their power. People are afraid of death. So if you're afraid of death, you can't really transform because the whole transformation process requires certain comfort with things dying. But, it's because of a lot of trauma, people are afraid to let go, and go through this passage. And in places like Glastonbury, the labyrinth, and just the maiden, mother, and crone, and just be dying and being reborn again when that mother energy was so strong on the planet, that was just a huge part of initiation. And it just isn't something that is talked about enough. So this is just some just current kind of stuff, but about where the planets have been. Uranus square Saturn. Uranus being all about freedom, truth, and authenticity. Saturn square. Squares are friction. Saturn's like, no, I won't let you go. You can't be sovereign. You can't be free. And we see the tyranny is out of control. It's completely insane. So that was in 2022. And Saturn's just like, nope. And that was a part of the Saturn-Pluto-Jupiter conjunction as well, of the tyranny, of the mandates, of all this kind of stuff. And like battling like this awakening process in the minds of humans where the battlefield is. So we're kind of like in this massive global detox, and waking up for people is painful. We may feel increased sensitivity to the vibration of pain around us, but after every detox, even though you may feel sicker while you're in it because it lights up old issues, when you get to the other side, one feels light and transformation and clear. And I think in the last couple of years, it might not be any more extreme for people, might not have really affected them. You might have done all that kind of death stuff early on, maybe in a past life, and it's like Pluto doesn't. But, sometimes we get empathic overload and we feel that towards others and feel it on the planet, but this has been pretty massive. And I feel everything and anything can be healed and overcome. The biggest thing is that when people get their minds back, that is going to offset any kind of bioweapon. And once you get yourself back, spirit holds dominion over physical matter, and there's nothing we can't do in the realm of miracles and being able to transform and repair. So I don't like it, the conquering divide can get just as bad, and sort of people who are awake too are just like, they're just sheeple or they don't get, but they're on their journey and they're going to get there. And I think we're going to see just a lot of breakthroughs. This is a breakthrough. The kind of speakers, the kind of audience, and what everybody's doing in their lives are all such a huge part of this. All the resources are there. And I know it'll turn everybody around as soon as they're ready. So here's all the body parts connected to the signs. And then Ophiuchus, which is the 13th sign. And that really is like the return of the mother energy is represented in the 13th sign. So it's always interesting, like if somebody has specific issues in these certain areas, looking at a chart, it's helpful to just kind of see, and Cancer represents the mother energy, and it's the name of one of the most, greatest afflictions out there. And I definitely think that there's a correlation of our relationship with mother in general, and our experience as women and men's connection with that within themselves. I mean, we're here to integrate polarity, find that sacred union within. So it's really helpful to know this kind of stuff when you're dealing with something, because we do well when we can hear a story or a root of something and like work it out. And then, the physical shifts and changes, we want to like bring life to it. We want to give attention to it. And this medical industry just likes to, make it go away, but it only gets worse because you can only silence it for so long. Sometimes, there's major successes and unbelievable surgeries and unbelievable medical things that take place every day, of course. But it'd be nice if, they could bring a little bit of that kind of stuff in and understand the whole person a little bit more, make it more of a collaboration. It's like, this is my body. It's like, I think I know what's going on. No, you don't know what's going on. I'm like, I'm freaking out of here. It's like, so, yeah, that's kind of the same kind of thing. But some doctors are wonderful and they make you a part of the process. I mean, it really depends. So I'm not like against, like, it might sound like that, like it's all vampiric in the system. There's so many incredible, individuals, and as soon as they decide they're not going to let themselves be compromised by what these dark agendas are asking of them, and they can just walk away, it's like the community's only going to grow and build, and it's going to take over. And there's no way that that is not going to happen, and it's going to continue to spread. We're now in a cycle of change where the vibration of this world is increasing and helping us to shift out of the lower dense physicality, moving us into higher earth energies, and our DNA strands that have been dormant have the potential to turn back on. The shift is within us. These energies are more available and easier for us to awaken to in these times, and the geophysics of the planet is such where the natural stargates are opening and our DNA is linked to this. And of course, the controller agendas are seeking to shut it all down. So we have to understand what's being targeted, and I think we definitely do. And understanding the current astrological climate can be helpful. So this is chakra 8 and 9. And this is male-female balance, integration of polarity. So that's an infinity spiral around our head. So if there's an infinity spiral activated around our head, and we're infinite beings, what that's going to do to our physical body is really, awesome. And we hear about the 7 chakras. We don't really hear a lot about chakras 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, going into cosmic trinity, 15-dimensional time matrix, which is what Keylontic science and folks like Lisa Renee talk about. And so this 8th and 9th infinity spiral connects with our glands, thymus and permanent seed atom of the crystal heart is chakra 8, gold, morphogenetic field, chakra 9, silver, atomic doorway, mouth of God, projector of light consciousness. Supposedly in Atlantean times, they put ethereal implants in the base of all our brain stem to interfere with this being able to be activated. Because if we're in the 7 chakra system with the logos being infected in the planetary grid network, we keep looping and kind of recycling and not really getting anywhere. When we break that and we begin to switch that on, that's usually when the spiritual warfare increases. But this is the 3 levels of sacred marriage. The 6th and 7th chakra, level 1, building wings. Level 2, crystal lotus heart, 8th and 9th. And that crystal lotus heart and the higher universal energies of the heart then get integrated into the 4th chakra. It turns from green to blue lotus, actually, is what she talks about. And level 3, Hyros Gamos, Christos, Hydro, plasmic light, 10, 11, 12. That's our full 12 strand beyond the 6th chakra, corresponding also with our DNA strands. And our science classes call it junk. It's like, wow, okay, thanks for keeping that from us. It's really nice. You're really nice people. So it's like bifurcating the F out of that world, right? It's like enough. Because it wants us to be in this low frequency, completely unstable, when we have a choice not to go there. So, and it's hard to say, what is that going to look like? We're just going to be over here, like, bye, everybody, we're like over here now. I think people are going to manifest these shifts and changes by maybe moving location, ending relationships, having more boundaries. You're just manifesting a whole different world for yourself. For others, they want to maybe stick around and heal as much as they can. Everybody's different depending on our agreements. But I feel there's a bridge between the two, and that we're already there, maybe somewhere in there. And I feel the bifurcation really started to happen with the Pluto, Saturn, Jupiter conjunctions, because that was like the major death. Either you fear death or you're going to go through that fire, you're going to go through that initiation and be reborn in some way, or release whatever from the old paradigm, whether you have to leave relationships, a career, or a job. It's just a huge time of transformation of really like making a choice in the face of something that's asking so much of us in the most manipulative, awful way. So I just feel, yeah, there's a major bridge for a lot of us between the two, kind of having our foot in both worlds maybe until, I mean, it's going to look different perhaps for everybody. But, not being on a different timeline, though. We're all on the organic ascension timeline. So this planet, or this sign, came into the planet in around 2010. And this is when a major timeline shift happened. Ophiuchus used to be connected to Enki and the serpent. This is about the return of the mother energy actually healing the fallen angelic energy. And it's between November 30th to December 17th, because a lot of people are like, do I need to do my chart again because of Ophiuchus? And it's only kids that are born after 2010 because the sun wasn't passing through Ophiuchus. And so it overlays between Scorpio and Sagittarius. So you still experience Scorpio, Sagittarius, Scorpio being ruled by Pluto, but now you got the ether element. So it's like, oh, when we go through the death process, now we get the ether. So it's actually much more of a transformation than before, which is maybe why we died so much in past lives, probably like prematurely because of all the wars and all the Holocaust and genocides and just all this. Now with the ether energy, it's just like we're really able to do more. I mean, last year during this particular window, some extraordinary things happened that that I just noticed about the energies that just weren't there before. So it's a really important, good time to focus and meditate and just really bring that in. And basically, Ophiuchus is the solidification of the organic ascension timeline. It's connected to the creatrix, pure, transparent, crystalline light, divine mother, and the cleansing power of cosmic love, recoding the DNA, aligning to the cosmic heart of Lyra and Andromeda and universal center. Because in this ascension window, Milky Way and Andromeda galactic cores unite. And then rebirthing, cleansing the blood, breath, and mitochondria. And so that's the ether energy. And it's ruled by Chiron, the wounded healer. So the more conscious we are of our wounds, the less we act out our wounds or try and cover them up, the better to have access to this energy. So it's ruled by Chiron. And our wounds with the mother, having the loss of the mother energy, the reversal mother energies, and all that we've overcome is how we gain access, by being more transparent, more mindful, more aware. And this is what is so beautiful about gatherings like this. There's healing tools and modalities, incredible nutrition. There's nothing but healing, nothing but love. And it's just like, whoa. I mean, it's just incredible that we have created this and this is where we're at. And all we want is to just bring as many people in as possible to enjoy this, because it's so wonderful to be at this phase of the journey. A lot of very powerful individuals and groups and soul consciousness came in for many years and many cycles, but they knew they couldn't really do much until this particular window. It just wouldn't really work very well until this alignment happened, until the precession of the equinoxes had completed its 26,000-year cycle, which is the opportunity to move on into a much higher reality and experience. So this phase is the solar alignment with the cosmic ether, which is at the core of the galactic center, which represents the pouring of healing spiritual waters into the earth and humanity from Mother God. Previously, these waters were corrupted by entrapping the Mother Principle and gold ray seraphim on earth. And so that is one indication for sure. And that number 13, we know how powerful that is. So RNA's primary responsibility is to make proteins according to the instruction sets encoded within a cell's DNA. However, in RNA, the nitrogenous base is made up of nucleic acids, cytosine, guanine, adenine, and uracil. Also, each of the RNA nucleic acids is connected to elemental substance of the planet as air, water, fire, earth. Planetary grid network, same thing. Okay, so in both DNA and RNA, the mitochondrial DNA serves as the fifth principal element of cosmic ether, which is sourced only from the mother. And in that last slide, Ophiuchus is connected to the mitochondria. So the ether element in our system on a DNA level is that mitochondrial DNA, which has been damaged. And that's why it's been so easy for people to be addicted to the reversal matrix energies, because we've had this void within our own cells. And so this damage has been passed on generation to generation. Now it's like healing. And I think people are having big breakthrough healing going on within themselves, connecting to Mother Earth, connecting to their own mother, connecting to their inner mother to mother their inner child. And the mother helps reconnect us to the true father energy, not the lower Anunnaki creator gods who think that they are gods, but they're basically imposters that are not where we truly come from. And some people believe that they created us, and I don't think anybody thinks that here, but so this is another message coming through, and I, kind of wary of channelers, but when you hear a real deal channeler, you get goosebumps and you could just feel it. So I was messaged by the guy who did this interview with Carl, and it's a very, very long interview with Eisenhower, and I just thought this was such an important piece to what came through Carl, and you can look it up online, Carl Mollison, channeling Eisenhower. So Spirit Eisenhower points out the potential pitfalls in assisting in humanity's shift in consciousness. All light workers leave their mark. and all have greater potential than they themselves know. The difficulty for them is not appreciating themselves enough, not understanding the truly great power they have, and this is better understood by the opposition. So when they are identified as risks and then manipulated by the dark side entities in a way to sideline them, there's a great loss to the cause, and in most cases the individuals themselves. If sidelined early enough, they are not aware of what they were capable of and would have accomplished. I think this really is the dilemma, because every single person that is born onto this planet has a soul, and in having a soul we have a divine purpose. And the level of manipulation is insane. So, and just seeing or going through the Mars manipulation, it's all for your safety and it's all good and this and that. I mean, the manipulation is so much the trickery of the false light and playing upon people's feelings and emotions and sense of security and safety. And the more true we are to ourselves, the greater our bullshit meter is, the more we can see through the lies and deceptions, and the more we can assist, the next generation and really hearing from our children more, instead of telling them and shoving this indoctrination onto them, that we guide them and we listen to them. Now, it's not the easiest thing to just be able to pull your kid out of school. I can't imagine having kids at a young age right now, because I was a single mom, and mostly, I wouldn't have really easily had that help. But and this is why we're going to continue to build community in bigger and better ways, to make sure that those resources are there. And we know that some are just going to be there to also be the rebels, to be the ones that are like, I mean, it wasn't as bad in my generation. I didn't sit still and I didn't listen. So hopefully, now that I realize that was a good thing instead of learning disabilities, if your kid comes home and doesn't do well on a test and just can't sit still, it's just awesome, instead of what it was before, which is, you're not paying attention and something's wrong with you, and you're gonna have nothing going for you in life if you don't succeed. And there was one really incredible quote where a person says, even if your kid doesn't get a good grade, maybe they're meant to be a musician. Maybe they're meant to, it's where we shut down, it's because our interest isn't there. So anyway, according to my research, the 13th blue ray was previously under the control of the Melchizedek hosting of our planet. They became fallen and patriarchal, and we were highly manipulated by the Orion group. Since the Sumerian Egypt invasion, the Mother Ark Aqua blue ray was not in the Earth core, so therefore the Earth had lost her Mother of God and Female Christ Sophionic body principle. And this 13th sign and the 13th gate and everything about the Mother has now come back. So without the Mother Ark or female principle able to manifest into form, it became hijacked and hidden, and the 13 families kept the ritual abuse alive to keep the dark reversals alive, so that we would not connect to the Mother or bring that energy back. And we hear references about the Mother, Virgin Mary, Mary Magdalene, but all we hear about Mary Magdalene is that she was released of demons after being a prostitute, and that's about it. And that's actually not fully the story, and there's so much more all to everything about the Mother. Of course, in this country, I think this country and every sacred site here has that knowingness and connection. And obviously we were there before all the infiltrations and attacks, and we remember, and we are in our remembrance. So the dodecahedron is connected to the ether, and the negative alien agenda and many of the Illuminati lines have misused this. And the dodecahedron being connected to the ether is that reversal that has now been corrected along with the Venus transit. So now that this energy is here and it's able to heal and restore, that's why all the psyops are fear of death, put you in survival, so you can't think, and everything is they're scared that the minute we connect to this, it's just it's all over. And there's nothing that this higher ether energy connected 0-point unified field cannot heal. And so when we activate the alchemy, we heal our DNA, and the fifth element is integrated, and the reversals are corrected. This comes about through sacred union within ourselves, which heals the grids as the activations coming in right now are healing us, and it's this co-creation and relationship. And that's why, we're 5D towers, because we are doing the alchemy, and it's clearing our throat chakra from mind viruses and things that infect other people, because people become a product of what they watch, and they're they spread it, or they reinforce it together. So the Melchizedeks are the genetic hosting race of the Earth ascension cycle for the last 35,000 years. As of 2009, 2012, our planet went beyond this to prepare for the return of the 13th gate pillar of Mother Ark, the return of the goddess. we will feel into the mother energy more and more and recognize that power within ourselves. And as you see, 2009, 2012, Ophiuchus, 2010, and then the Venus transits, the final one, 2012. So we already saw that. And I know I'm almost out of time here. The inverted pentagram or five-pointed star, so prevalent in Satanism, is also symbolic of this unbroken time cycle, the vibrational prison. The fifth element connects to the alchemy, and our throat chakra is the key to overcoming this. It comes down to the power of our words. We know our words can uplift and heal and unify, or our words can traumatize and damage. And it's just that simple responsibility we have to ourselves and each other to share words of love, encouragement, and have all the pain and adversities of our life just give us wisdom. Because the name of this presentation really is Upgrading in the Face of Adversity. It's like all the adversities. It's like one of my favorite I Ching quotes or passages is, the stronger the wagon, the heavier the load. I mean, and it's part of the great initiation. They just want us to perceive it differently, so we give our power away instead of getting to know ourselves more. In the face of adversity, we have one of two choices. We either get to know ourselves more, or we hand it over to somebody else to define. And so obviously there's a lot of help out there, but we have to be majorly a part of whatever healing we're doing. And this is the corrected pentagram, of course, with spirit upright. And I'm sorry for repeating slides. So this is one of the most incredible artists. When I lived in England with my granny, she used to watch Dallas, you know, the soap opera. And Mitch Cooper is this guy. And his name is Lee McCloskey. And he has painted the goddess energy and the whole mythos of the goddess energy and the Christos all over his house without using a canvas, on the couches, on the walls, on the ceiling. And I can barely capture it, but I visited him a bunch of times. And he created this tarot deck. I mean, he's unbelievable. That's the Sophia energy. And that's like a cupboard. If you open it, he has like what's inside her head, like a bunch of crystals and shells and passages. And I mean, it's so wild. And it's in 3D. If you put 3D glasses on, the whole place comes alive. When I first met him, I was just like in tears. I was just like, oh my God. He's a really, if you look him up, he's just really amazing person. Incredible, like 45-year marriage, just really cool. So turning it upright, aligning with these corrections, micro, macro, self-correction, healing, and transformation. So if you see the Venus transits have formed a perfect pentagram, and so, you know, every 8 years, and even in retrogrades, it's formed a perfect pentagram in the sky. So when we think about our own personal alchemy and transformation, and the fact that the 13th sign of Ophiuchus connected to Chiron, the wounded healer, and these corrections happening to turn the inverted pentagram right side up so it connects with the ether, and it gets out of the dodecahedron reversal, dark reversal grid technologies, that this mother energy is repairing herself as we're repairing with her and healing with her. And that's what's so beautiful, because, you know, it's not just ascension being a concept, oh, we're just waking up and we're just like, it's like we're like doing this together, and it just shows the unconditional love of our mother, even though she couldn't embody in the planet because of all the wars and all the catastrophes and all the targets on her planetary body. She's now been able to return, and the conduits of this energy who have done massive grid work that are just in their soul purpose and alignment, which is the company here. This, why he's like, I was blown away when you said yes. I'm like, Eli, where are you coming up with this crap? He's so sweet. I'm like so thrilled and honored to be a part of this. Of course, it's my freaking homeland too. See, my inner voice is actually a British accent, but I still have an American one. But when I like have verbal like dialogue inside my head, it's completely British accent. So this is more of the sacred geometry of Venus, and it forms the sacred geometry of a rose. So that's the heart of the mother that has been healing herself, healing the planet, and us being connected to the mother, doing this on a ground level. And so I will just sort of close it there, but I want to close this a quote from the Essene Gospel of Peace. And what I love about this gospel is it also talks about the law being written in our hearts, being written in the trees and the rocks and the stones and the water and the earth. And it's not, you know, written in law. It's not in the scriptures. The scriptures are dead. Listen to your heart. Listen to and it's like Jesus says. So when people are like, we're really worried about you, you know, you share this kind of work and it doesn't come from the scripture and this kind of stuff, I just gently just send them a few quotes from the Essene Gospel of Peace. And we know that group is very, there's a lot of wiping out of so much. But anyway, I love this quote. Your mother is in you and you are in her. She bore you, she gives you life. It was she who gave to you your body, and to her you shall one day give it back again. Happy are you when you come to know her and her kingdom. If you receive your mother's angels, and if you do her laws, I tell you truly, he who does these things shall never see disease, for the power of our mother is above all, and it destroys Satan and his kingdom, and has rule over all your bodies and all living things. The blood which runs in us is born of the blood of our earthly mother. Her blood falls from the clouds, leaps up from the womb of the earth, babbles in the brooks of the mountains, flows wide in the rivers of the plains, sleeps in the lakes, rages mightily in the tempestuous seas. And as we know, our mother is one and in sacred union with the Father, and the Christ Sophia is the divine template that we all carry, and that connection to that cosmic trinity. So in reconnecting with the mother, we reconnect with the Father, and that union of polarity integration within us births the magical child, the Christ Sophia, and then we have better relationships, and we find soul family, and if we're with the divine masculine man, he can just take us on as women and we can take them on and live happily ever after. And beautiful, happy humans. Thank you, everybody.